As a man who grew up with 5 and sometimes 6 women in the house, one of the most frustrating experiences was navigating arguments. No amount of logic, sequence of axioms, or frustration got a point across. It was always they are right. I had to learn to be okay with being in the wrong because they would group together and take each other's side when it came to this. And typically, if you make too much sense, you get a blow-off response like, "Whatever, shut up. You think that?" And I fucking hate that. I just ignore it and do what I do now. However, in this video, I want to go over why this happens, the motive behind, and the broader implications appealing to emotion over rationale for society. But first, let's look at our first case.
Reacting to the 50-50 that men asterisk like to talk about. It's never 50-50. Okay, simply being with a man is labor. Simply being with a man is risk. Okay, simply by being with a man, not even living together, is labor and risk. So imagine moving in with a man to uphold the standards of cleanliness and organization that you used to do for one person. Now you have, and then the random things on the honey-do list, they always put off, by the way, and then you have to constantly remind them. And then when you do that, you're the nag, you're the bad person because they're not doing what they're supposed to do. Okay, like they're acting like children, and then they get treated like one, and then they're so surprised.
Oh, she left out of nowhere. It came out of nowhere.
Like, no, she's been telling you. She's been tired. She's been exhausted. She's been overworked. She's been feeling like she's taken advantage of. And finally, she shows herself. Okay, women are no longer signing up to parent man children. Like, women are signing up for adult partners. So anyway, whenever they bring up all these random man chores as proof that they're doing their fair share of the domestic work as an excuse to opt out of quote unquote women's chores that need to get done daily, multiple times a day, unseen, unheard, uncelebrated women's chores like laundry, folding clothes, doing the dishes, taking care of the children, cooking, cleaning, like things that are so devalued.
Like, oh, that's all you do all day?
Like, try doing it too, you know, like try. Like, let's talk about it. A lot of stay-at-home moms who do everything that I just listed on a daily basis and have all that labor be devalued, a lot of them would rather work an 8-hour work week and then come home and be like a man and just put their feet up and that's it.
I guess it's time, huh? Yeah, you heard it. We got a list of things I want to go through before we hit the motives behind the reasoning for this kind of argument and style, and also the implications on society. I'm going to now share with you a video from Louise Rossman who explains the first segment of this list, the men asterisks, which he calls me plus.
My ego or my vanity was bruised as a result of him believing that his company was actually equal to my company, rather than his company needed to accompany money in order to be equal to my company. This is called me plus, when you believe that what you bring to the table is not enough, that you have to bring something plus you to the table to be equal to somebody else simply bringing themselves. It is typically something that occurs when people have confidence issues, or people have social issues, or they have fucked up ass childhood, and it's really just kind of gutturally disgusting hearing words like safety being used to describe somebody not taking part in me plus when they are with you.
Well said. Very well said. Let's watch this back one more time.
Reacting to the 50-50 that men asterisk like to talk about. It's never 50-50. Okay, simply being with a man is labor. Simply being with a man is risk. Okay, simply by being with a man, not even living together, is labor and risk.
So if you're not paying 100%, you are below minimum low effort as a man within a relationship because of the risk and labor that she participates in within that relationship. Well, what is the labor? She goes on to state laundry, dishes, maybe cooking, if she knows how to cook, which we all fucking highly doubt. And what are the risks? She never goes into it. But one simple search can find you the risk men take when entering a marriage, hell, even a long-term relationship, and better worse, a babysitter. You get my point. Moving on.
Men are acting like children because they didn't do what you wanted them to when you asked.
As if there's no need for individual autonomy and the person can't make their own decisions and you can't cooperate and work together within a relationship. I get it. Sure, be a child. Her demeanor and attitude when speaking about this breathes a sense of entitlement to somebody's resources that they worked for years of their life, shows a lack of maturity on this person's part, indicating that there is a complete lack of capability of having a nurturing relationship with another human being that is not necessitated by feeding them money in their mouth so they shut up. No self-respecting man will put himself in that kind of position.
Women's chores that need to get done daily, multiple times a day, unseen, unheard, uncelebrated. Women's chores like laundry, folding clothes, doing the dishes, taking care of the children, cooking, cleaning, like things that are so devalued. Like, oh, that's all you do all day? Like, try doing it too, you know? Like, try.
Bitch, please. I've been doing this since the 3rd fucking grade. It ain't hard. This is also coming from a guy who was a stay-at-home father for quite some time. So I even know what that's like, and it's fucking easy. Okay, now we purge those emotions through the arguing back there. Let's move on to why something like this.
All men are a little bit bad. No offense, sorry. Just like our society is not built for women to succeed. Men are not built to want to see you succeed. Sorry. Even the most supportive men, like subconsciously, they might want to fuck you over, okay? They don't even know that they want to, but they kind of sabotage your success. They do when you're young, because they do get threatened deep down, even if they don't mean to.
Women are raped and murdered, and for this, we need to kill all men. Kill male babies and just kill any man that you see, like in the streets, like any swing chick, just kill him.
Is happening. One of the first things we'll be looking at are personality differences on average between the two genders. The first one being neuroticism. Neuroticism describes the tendency to experience negative emotion and related processes in response to perceived threat and punishment. These include anxiety, depression, anger, self-consciousness, and emotional lability. Women have been found to score higher than men on neuroticism as measured at the Big 5 trait level, as well as on most facet levels of neuroticism, including a common measure of the Big 5. Additionally, women also score higher than men on related measures not designed specifically to measure the Big 5, such as indices of anxiety and low self-esteem. Which would explain this? I kid. But one interesting thing to note about neuroticism is that it is higher in younger age females, especially when they're coming into adulthood. It lowers within time and with men, it is the opposite. They start lower, but then they increase as they age. Which might explain why these kind of videos are coming from younger individuals.
Victims, and my husband was brutally killed. So I just wanted to give some love today.
When we talk about differences with capacity and drive, there's a couple things I think are pretty important. One is industriousness, 2, testosterone and the performance-based sexual competition, 3, lower compassion, 4, lower agreeableness, and 5, sexual dimorphism. Whatever, who cares? When you have a group of people who have equal levels of orderliness, you're going to find on average men have more industriousness. That is determination, diligence, persistence, and hardworking factors. This probably comes from testosterone and the necessary means to compete within your dominance hierarchy as a man. So when we add all these factors together, the lower agreeableness, the lower compassion, which allows you to not focus on people as much, and then you have that extra drive of persistence and hardworking determination, that will push you in a certain direction to excel at something on average more often. And that's probably why we see a lot of discrepancies between male CEOs and such. You know, there's probably other hormonal factors I'm not going to dig into because I don't care too much about that. But we all know, like, when you increase your testosterone, you have more energy, you have more sex drive just as a man. I don't know what those effects are on women, but I would assume that's the same. But I would take that with a grain of salt. Either way, when we're looking at this in totality, you're finding that there's just more drive on average. I'm also going to take this time to throw in a caveat where this entire conversation seems awfully negative, and there's highlighted sections of like increased negativity, which is to add dramatic effect to be a lot more funny. I am going to highlight the good characteristics of these sort of traits like agreeableness and such that are presented within women. And that will be later within this video. But this video is to answer the question, why do these arguments typically happen? Why are they frustrating? What are the motives behind it and the implications on society at large when we adopt this kind of argumentation style? Plus the bonus question for all the freak clips that you're seeing, which is coming soon. But let's get into agreeableness. Agreeableness comprises traits relating to altruism, such as empathy and kindness. Agreeableness, hey, we're back, involves the tendency toward cooperation, maintenance of social harmony, and consideration of concerns of others. Women consistently score higher than men on agreeableness and related measures such as tender-mindedness. And I gotta say, this is by far my favorite fucking trait. No matter how much of the hard shit that you have within your dating life, when you meet somebody who's just very compassionate, very caring and loving, and obviously of the opposite sex, and you feel that and you get to receive that, it is like a saving grace. It is the Holy Mary. It really just brings you up from the dirt. I don't know how to explain it. I know you guys experience this, and I love it. Like, that's gives me so much drive and energy. It gives me so much more life when I'm able to experience that. So you might be wondering, why does this come in account to when we're talking about rationale in arguments? This is very important because when you have someone who's very sacrificing for other people and committed to social cohesion, you typically sacrifice yourself and what you feel, which builds resentment. Actually, you know what? Let me let Jordan Peterson describe this.
One of the cardinal personality dimensions is agreeableness. And agreeable people, it's really a maternal dimension. And agreeable people are compassionate and polite. They're very interested in people and in serving people. And it's likely a dimension that maximizes the capacity to take care of the weak and the infirm and infants and the outsiders. And now, the disadvantage to being agreeable is that you can be taken advantage of because you can't stand up for yourself very well, partly because of your self-sacrificing nature, let's say. And so you can be a pushover and then become resentful and angry and bitter and feel that you're in an unfair world, giving all the time and never receiving.
Okay, so if we can piece everything together so far with a reasonable mindset, we're looking at someone who doesn't want to disrupt the social harmony. They want to receive something, as we all do, and they want a solution. So they're gonna come to you because you have the higher capacity, higher capability typically, or maybe you're part of the solution that's necessary. So the way they're coming to you and appealing to you is probably not the way that you're gonna receive it best well. Either in rationale, sometimes you can appeal to emotion very well. But when that resentment builds up, when it's not understood, that's when it gets to the dark side. And we're going to get into the darker, deep rabbit hole later on in this video. But for this part, the rationale is an emotional one. It is to attempt to work around and get a solution with you. I have a couple of anecdotes that I asked some people, and from teenagers as well, from my partner. One of her kids has a bunch of friends. So I'm going to provide those up on the screen over here to show some understanding on how they're feeling. And I can show you the questions as well that they answered to. So number one, this was all the girls answered. They provided some more, but I didn't understand what context that was in. So I'm only putting the ones I understand the context in. But not listening, not being understood. Guys tend to not want to understand when they play dumb and they don't understand or pretend to, telling women how they feel, putting words in their mouth, or trying to tell them how they feel again, and then add in some twists so they can prove a point. This probably comes from a lack of actual addressing the real issue and strawmanning someone's argument. So it would do you a lot of favor as a man, if you're having this kind of discussion with a woman, to really get down to what it is that is being discussed. This is something I do with my partner that I learned over the years, and I'm really tuning into now, where she'll say something, and I'm really good at picking this up. I'm not trying to blow gas up my own ass, but I ask her this, and she's like, yeah. So like a lot of times what I do is I'll reflect back what that person's saying. So I'll say, what I'm feeling that you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you feel very frustrated because this person didn't listen to you, and it seems like maybe what you said wasn't important. Do you feel like that's accurate? And they can choose to say yes or no and then add more into that. And you can ask them, well, do you want to add more to that? And then the more you know about this person, the more you understand about the situation, the easier it is for you to understand what to call out. And then once you could voice that specifically, they understand, they're heard because you reflected it back to them. And then you now understand that's exactly what they mean. So you can approach that thing specifically in target and annihilate that. It's miraculous. Sometimes, like, I'll just, like, I get so good at this sometimes with some people, I just fucking shoot it out. You know, I remember I was on this date with this chick and we were cuddling, and I was like, you want me to be honest with you? And she said, yeah. I said, like, 100% honest? This is my favorite question, by the way. 100% honest or 50%? And she said, 100%, of course. I said, okay. I feel like you're sad. Underneath, I feel like you've been sad for a long time, and somehow recently that's just bubbling up as resentment, and you're getting frustrated and you're trying to, you know, push it back, but like you can't really hold that back. And does that sound about right? And she started opening. This is the first time I met this chick. We never talked about anything like this. We were just making out, shooting the shit, having fun. And we just happened to start cuddling. And she starts opening up about her situation and starts crying. And she's like crying in my arms for like 20 minutes or so, until I was like, all right, I had enough, and I left. The moral of the story is you can sense it. And you can politely call out specifically what it is. And it's not dick, it's not rude, because it is a validation of that emotional response. And then once you can come to that, they can feel like they're seen, they're heard, it makes everything so much easier, you know. And this is when you're dealing with someone who is more typically normal. When we're getting to the extreme cases, like what I presented in the videos as examples of crazy behavior, that's what we're getting into later in the video. That's a whole different substratum. Like, that's a different category of person, male and female. But when you're dealing with normal people, this is easily one of the best solutions. You just have to find what it is and address that. We now arrive to the dark, deep rabbit hole. We're about to get fucking into it. There's 2 videos in reference I would love for you guys to watch. Yes, they are long watches, but it's very informative and way more in depth than what I am going to be able to provide for you. So I'm going to give a relative synopsis of what I got and what is relevant for this conversation.
They found that TIV was positively correlated with participants' rejection sensitivity, victim sensitivity, private consciousness, public consciousness, and motivation for revenge, but not with motivation for avoidance nor for benevolence. The higher one's interpersonal victimhood tendency, the less willing that person was to forgive, and TIV was the single best predictor of entitlement to engage in bad, immoral behavior, followed only by motivation for revenge, indicating that people who see themselves as victims are uniquely prone to believe that they are morally superior to others and should be allowed to harm others when they are feeling victimized. That would explain why
kill male babies and just kill any man that you see, like in the streets, like any swing chick, just kill him.
Right, so TIV is already coming into play now, and that is the tendency for individualized victimization. This can sort of explain the video of the woman on New York street saying all men are a little bit bad and so on. She feels victimized and she feels justified for this opinion and this statement and this belief pattern that she has. The real danger, though, is having an intimate relationship with these people where you give them sensitive information about you. This part of the Aiden Paladin video is also going to further explain that.
Higher levels of TIV were associated with more negative attributes given to the partner at the law firm, a greater recall of all negative emotions, and a desire to seek revenge. Specifically, the more one attributed the criticism of the senior partner to his or her negative attributes, the greater the reported desire for revenge. Thus, seeing the self as a perpetual victim seemingly produces a tendency to attribute more negative qualities to others who are critical of the self or one's behaviors, and a desire to get revenge against those critics.
I don't know about you guys, but every single relationship I have ever been in involves some sort of criticism that is necessary to further develop either the relationship or that person you're with, or sometimes it's just petty. Either way, it's gonna fucking happen. And the worst, very, very worst part about that is it's not the minor infractions and it's not the major infractions that will incite the revenge in this kind of individual. In fact, it is the medium, which is weird. This next segment is a little bit long, it's probably like 2 minutes, but it's very well worth the watch. Check this out.
In a fourth study to better understand the relationship between tendency towards individual victimhood and revenge, participants played a computerized version of the dictator game against what they believed was another player but was in fact all pre-programmed. In this game, both supposed participants were entered into a raffle to determine how the two of them should split 10 Israeli shekels, a little less than $3 US. However, as mentioned, the game was scripted so that the computer always won and offered either a mildly unfair split, giving 4 shekels to the participant, a moderately unfair split, allocating 3 shekels, and a severely unfair split, leaving the participant with only 1 shekel. Subjects were asked how hurt they felt by the deal, what negative emotions the experience evoked, if they believed they were morally entitled to take revenge, and then were given a potential opportunity to get even, being asked how much, if any, the opponent's winnings they would like to take from them, under the condition that the subject, him or herself, would not receive any of that money, making the act purely spiteful.
Yeah, this is gonna get playfully anti-Semitic, so just allow it to go there.
Tendency towards individual victimhood predicted taking revenge against the other purported player in the mild offense condition, but not more in the moderate or severe offense conditions. Although TIV was not related to actually seeking revenge in the more egregious cases of unfair treatment, the tendency was related to more reported negative emotions and towards a belief that one is entitled to behave immorally when there was a mild infraction. Perhaps then it is not victims of more serious harm that seek to cause harm to others in recompense, but instead people who think that, for example, just posting pictures from publicly available modeling shoots and music videos that the person themselves consented to being in is a form of human trafficking are the same kinds of people who will use such minor issues to call for crusade and for vengeance. Model analysis was indicative that, specifically, the more one's tendency towards individual victimhood, the more negative emotions the dictator game produced, which in turn resulted in greater propensity to seek revenge. And although TIV was also related to entitlement to immoral behavior, that entitlement did not predict more vengeful acts in aggregate, only in the mild condition. It seems then consistent across these various studies that people who see themselves as victims will be more negatively emotionally affected in some situation that they view as unfair, and when they experience those negative emotions, will actively engage in vengeful behavior against those that they believed have wronged them, even if that revenge in no way benefits him or herself.
You guys get where I'm getting at in this, okay? Right? All right. Let's go down another rabbit hole of covert narcissism and its relation to social media.
Who is more likely to become addicted to social media? Vulnerable narcissists or grandiose narcissists? Their sample was comprised of over 500 Italian university students who, as Italians, have narcissism baked into their DNA. It's the factory setting. And who answered survey questions regarding their tendencies towards grandiose narcissism, hypersensitive or vulnerable narcissism, and problematic social media use. They found that males were more likely to present with grandiose narcissism traits, which we've seen before, while women were more likely to present with vulnerable narcissism traits. Again, we've seen this. While grandiose narcissists were not more likely to be addicted to using social media than were non-narcissists, vulnerable narcissists were. This may be because vulnerable narcissists are using social media to gain approval and admiration, whereas social media is likely just one of the many tools that grandiose narcissists use to bolster their own sense of self-worth. Thus, women are more likely to be vulnerable narcissists, and vulnerable narcissists are more likely to be addicted to social media. And there it is. That's why there are so many women who may seem to have insanely inflated egos posting for attention online. It's all vulnerable narcissism. Always has been. These women do believe that they are 10 out of 10s on some level, yes, but she also wants, nay needs, someone else to tell her, to affirm to her, that she definitely is. It seems though that even within vulnerable narcissists, there are conflicting reasons for posting to social media. Yes, they want attention, yes, they want affirmation, but they also only want positive attention, and thus get quite irate when their attempts at gaining that attention are met with mockery or negative comments, such as we can clearly illustrate in Bethany Baki, who felt confident in talking about how overwhelmingly beautiful she was, but became incensed when commenters called her mid.
Is anyone else with me with shattering the very fragile egos of these individuals? No? Is it just me? it's just me. Fuck, you know, I'm all alone. It's just you and me, Stormy. The very hurtful thing about this is that these extreme cases of social media narcissism, whether vulnerable or egomaniac, whatever the fucking other one is that it does bleed into the general populace, because those extremes increase the Overton window, and then that social media is what decides pretty much the societal norms that we have, what is acceptable, what is to be looked after. And, you know, the currency that is paid within social media is attention, whether it's negative or positive. Obviously, you want more positive, but some people are willing to go for negative exposure, and that does give them the benefits that they would otherwise get from positive exposure itself. You know, I'm not saying it's virtuous and you should aim for that. We all know that, but it doesn't matter because it still provides some positive outlook for that person. And it sucks because you have videos like this that demonstrate that you should be treating people like crap and as a monetary resource that is just to be supplied to you because you require it, and that you will receive that because you are you, without ever providing value or necessary reasons that you would have an interaction or an engagement with this person that seems reasonable. You know, not all relationships are business deals, but it's like, dude, I don't know how to put this. Like, my partner is an FBI agent, and I have another partner who handles millions of dollars to fundraisers for different companies and businesses. So, like, these are high-level people. I'm not asking shit for them. You know, I don't want the fucking money. I don't want whatever. I'm chilling. Our engagement is that we enjoy each other's time and we hang out. Like, it doesn't have to be, I don't know. Like, the Overton window's not shifting over here because, you know, I'm a fucking samurai. I'm fucking cutting left and right, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, like, when you have people who their main objective socially is to retain that social cohesion and amicability, then you're going to be influenced. Also, quote to the Jordan Peterson video we just watched earlier, you're going to be self-sacrificing for the needs of others. So you're going to be putting them first in their desires and their values and their beliefs. So you're having this entire shift of a generation, this is men and female, of this negative, twisted view when it comes to relating to each other, not just romantically, but in a basic sense where women think they're automatically going to be a victim and will rather be with a vicious 2,000-pound animal than a fucking man. And it's getting goddamn ridiculous, and I had enough.
Fagan and Bland 2021 hypothesized that these differences may be because vulnerable narcissism is comprised of two competing aspects: oversensitivity and egocentricity. Oversensitivity was defined by the authors as an anxious and vulnerable state with a strong reaction to others, perceiving oneself negatively or unfavorably, while egocentricity was defined as a focus on one's own needs and desires at the expense and disregard for others' needs and desires. Students at Manchester Metropolitan University completed a vulnerable narcissism instrument that contained subscales for both oversensitivity and egocentricity, and answered several questions about their social media use, including frequency, concerns with the number of likes a post received, feelings of jealousy, how negative remarks affect their emotional state, how accurate to real life their personal social media posts portrayed themselves, as well as which platforms they used, when, and why they used social media. Instagram was the most commonly used platform, followed by Snapchat, then Twitter, then Facebook, then TikTok, and then other platforms. The three most commonly given reasons for using the sites were to waste time, 92%, to stay in touch with friends and family, 86%, and to keep up to date with the news, 74.6%. Oversensitivity was related to spending more time on social media, but not egocentrism. Similarly, frequency of posting, the importance of likes and comments, and jealousy were all only related to oversensitivity. While concerns with negative remarks was related directly only to oversensitivity, egocentricity moderated the effect. Both oversensitivity and egocentricity were related to differences between real life and the way that students portrayed themselves online. Using social media at more times of the day was related to oversensitivity, while egocentricity was only related to checking socials during meals. Both forms of vulnerable narcissism were related to using social media while in public social situations, actually physically present around others, preferring the digital over the real world.
We don't have to worship a calculator! There is no formula for people! Oh, you're punishing me for being alive!
That's the general idea, baby.
Participants who used these outlets for the purpose of posting images of themselves or sharing life updates were more likely to be oversensitive, but not more likely to be egocentric. Based on these results, the scholars broke down participants into 3 phenotypes of vulnerable narcissists: overly sensitive, overly egocentric, and equal amounts of both traits. And it quickly became apparent that the types of vulnerable narcissists who spend more time on social media, post more, care more about engagement, are more jealous, are averse to negative feedback, and tend to depict an inaccurate version of their lives are all oversensitive, vulnerable narcissists.
There you go. That's your sign. Anybody in your life that you know, not saying cut them off, but just be aware that those tendencies are going to be there. And then also reflect back to 20 minutes within this video on the dictator game, where the people were able to give punishment to that person who, quote, did them wrong, end quote. It's the mediums that are going to get these people irate and go for revenge. What are those mediums? We'll look at the Baki girl. When you do not validate them, when you contradict that validation and do not give them that self-esteem boost that they require, that is probably almost already false. So when you have a healthy relationship that instills boundaries and expectations of progression, you're going to have to come into those bumps in the roads. That's not going to be possible. And then you're going to get targeted because you do that.
Vulnerable narcissism was also assessed, and they found that vulnerable narcissism was positively and significantly correlated with all 4 motives for posting, as well as all types of problematic social media use. These relationships were both direct between vulnerable narcissism and problematic use, as well as indirectly, as vulnerable narcissism was moderated through 3 of the 4 motives: coping, conformity, and enhancement, but not socialization. That is, using social media compulsively as a form of mood regulation due to obsessive thoughts, preferring social media over face-to-face communication, and expressing negative repercussions from this disordered use were all related to vulnerable narcissism. But the desire to socialize was not a factor, only a desire to forget one's worries, for excitement, or to be liked by others. The vulnerable narcissists posting these kinds of videos are not seeking a real connection with other people. They're seeking attention. They're seeking to entertain themselves or to distract themselves from perhaps more worrying things. They are, in fact, coping.
It is. And did none of us see that? I feel like we all know it was coping. But there seems to be this pullback when it comes to actually critiquing and criticizing and bringing this up, and especially when it comes to a larger demographic of individuals like my generation. And it's just very sad to see, because when you engage with a lot of these people, it becomes very easy to see that this is not going to be a person who's going to receive criticism, valuable criticism. I don't mean just being an asshole, but providing feedback that is necessary. I met a coworker recently. We all met out for drinks, and I was talking to him. He was talking to me about his situation, and I was probing, asking him questions, and stuff like, okay, so you obviously want to be a good guy. You want to act in a way that you feel like is a good guy. What would a good X name be doing right now? What would he do? And then he'd provide an example, and I'll probe deeper. Do you honestly believe that? Yes. Do you believe that because of this, or do you believe that because you feel like you should be expected to feel that way? Okay, so rid of those feelings. What do you actually want? Okay, can't you see how what you actually want is contradictory to what you're doing, or contradictory to what a good X name would be? So is being a good person sacrificing yourself and pretending to be someone else for someone else? Stuff like that. Like, you can actually provide input, and there's very little amount of people that I interact with that I find that I can have those conversations with, where they're actually interested into digging into themselves, because there's this massive fear of approaching the unknown, approaching the actual self, instead of presenting a persona of perfection despite those constant imperfections. You see this with all the fat activists, or the men's health magazines now putting fat dudes, or the women's now sexy lingerie are all fat and obese and somehow disabled. Like you're supposed to manipulate me to want to fuck that. It doesn't work. My dick gets hard, and it doesn't. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the number one metric you guys should do. You should use. Are you, am I attracted or all these things? Is your fucking dick hard or not? Is it or not? Right? Like, it's so simple. Keep it so simple. You know, you're either being honest or you're not. You're lying to yourself. You're straight up coping, and you're trying to receive cheap pornographic validation on social media so you can do the fucking easy shit and forget about doing the actual shit that fucking matters. Everybody that gets consistent within working out knows the true joy of working out. I'm not even going to tell you guys, because if you do it, you fucking know. Yes, looking at yourself in the mirror and looking good feels fucking good, right? Everyone wants to take the fucking diet pills. Everyone wants a new fad diet. Everyone wants to do the new best cheap quick fix that you can find. It doesn't work. None of it is going to work. You need to fix your metabolism. You need to fix your habits. You need to fix the way that you're approaching life and move more. It is so simple, but you don't want to do it because it's the harder to do. But the actual enjoyment is the work that you're doing. The harder path is the enjoyment of it. It is that sacrifice you are consistently making that is pushing you. It is the active pursuing of a North Star, a goal, a line, a cross, an X, or whatever. It is becoming. That is the true goal. It is moving towards something. But you will never understand that as long as you're constantly mentally jerking off on fucking social media, looking for validation of others to approve of where you're at, so you don't have to fucking do shit and you continue to eat drive-through McDonald's like a fat 300-pound motherfucker you are. It's lazy. It's pathetic. It's fucking annoying. And especially when it comes to people that you're supposed to be sexually attracted to. How disrespectful. You think I'm just so easy? Like, you think you could skew my opinions, but you should be able to want to fuck me? No, fuck you. What are you talking about? Hell no. I don't even want to get near you because I feel like you smell bad. Your makeup looks atrocious. I said it. I fucking said it. Fucking come over here and talk to me or something. Rub on my balls and lick at my face while you're talking to me like that. Fuck off. And that's part of the lasting question we have, which is, what are the implications for society when people appeal to emotion over rationale at large, meaning like majority of the population? And that's part of it is you're going to have a bunch of fat, lazy motherfuckers who are rejecting everything based on their emotional needs and not making necessary sacrifices to better the future, whether that's financially for your family, health, or even for society. They don't. In fact, what we can define as what all if history does of modern society is that modern society identifies itself as the complete rejection or whatever the opposite of what was traditional. It is an attempt to rid of. It's an opening shell. Like, I get it. I really do embrace the idea of the phoenix, the idea of Christ being reborn, the idea of the sun resurfacing from the night, the idea of coming up, you know, but you're fucking going about it wrong. The idea of rebirthing is ridding of what doesn't work, ridding of what is bad. And how can you dictate what is bad if you're running on pure emotion? I've always been on the standpoint that emotion is your first feeling when it comes to information, is your first process that you have to filter through. But it means emotion can be very quick. It means emotion can be very intuitive, but it also means emotion could be tied to that does not matter. And you need to use different filters to process and understand what was felt, the information provided. Use your rationale to battle it out and see what the best likely outcome is from this. If you're feeling angry, you're likely feeling unjustified. You feel like you've been wronged. Okay? To act on that anger is not to just throw a rage fit. To act on that anger is, why am I pissed off? Why is this pissing me off? Okay, that makes sense. What is the best possible outcome? Well, I want the solution. How can I go about that? That's how you do it. But now we're just like a rage crying baby as a society at large, especially our younger generation, which is going to fucking take over soon. And they're all just addicted to social media attention and to the need to be validated by other people for their stupid fucking beliefs and identities, that they'll fucking cry if you call them not a man or not a woman or whatever it is. And then what? Like, I don't even know where I was going with that thought, but fuck it. Where the fuck are we going? You can't argue with that. The person has rejected the very thought of being rational. They don't want it, because that is light, because that will reflect the dark crap that is within, that will reflect the insecurities, that will reflect the insufficiencies within that person. And because they know, everybody fucking knows, and you know deep inside your mind, you're not doing what you need to be doing for you to get what you want. Everybody fucking knows it. That is, like, for me, the fundamental of, like, whatever the Christian doctrine is. I'm not freaking Christian like that, but that resurrection, that necessary sacrifice, like, all religions are going to talk about this because it's so important. It is self-reflection. You cannot date somebody reasonably if they do not self-reflect. This is why I'm not fucking with average chicks. I mean, I'll put my dick in it, but I'm not going to be giving you this emotional and time-wise investment if you do not show me the capacity at which you can self-reflect, take accountability, and then work your way through solutions and problems with me. If I see that, it's pretty sexy. I have a partner that does that, and we talk all the time. It's been long distance for a minute, but like it's like one of the most rational people I know, you know? And so, like, you don't have a society of that. When I talk to girls that I'm dating, it is just this, oh my God, a fucking again, you know? So that's what you're gonna get. We're gonna go to shit. That's the only reasonable way. There is no rationale within that society. You can already see the case for the immigrants. We all fucking knew they're gonna give immigrants the right to vote as long as they did something. They fucking lied to you. This is just a conspiracy theory. You know, you have billionaires and the WFO talking about the massive populace of the human race and how it needs to decrease. How the fuck are you gonna do that exactly? What are you planning? What do you mean by that? Instead of making more arable land, you know, instead of actually looking at what climate change is and looking at the necessary levels of CO2 for plants to remain and exist and to be flourishing, instead of looking at actual factors and rationale and having arguments about these things, we're making emotional decisions based on our fate, right? And then running with that and just letting fucking people take the wind. CO2 is necessary for our environment. Plants breathe CO2, and under a certain parts per billion of CO2, they're going to start dying off. Do you guys not know that? Sure, like, even if the climate gets hotter, we're a tropical species. Like, we're designed to survive that. It's uncomfortable, I get that. But, like, when the climate does increase, if that's the direction we're going, that's going to make more arable land, like in climates that are way too cold, so we can produce more food. What's the fucking problem with that? Nothing is. You know? So, like, it's all this emotion, all this action without a process of thinking. We need that process of thinking, or we're just going to end up killing ourselves. There is one last thing I would like to add on the idea of having an argument with a woman you're in a relationship with. And there's ideally two ways you can go about this. And it depends on the person you're talking to. If this is someone who's very rational and you can have great discussions with, and you can tell there's a lot of like whatever, and this is a normal person, for that normal person, you can have a rational discussion. Do what I did earlier in this video. Reflect what you think they're saying in a reasonable way. Don't be manipulative. Don't be a fucking ass. Be introspective and genuinely trying to solve the situation. And that mentality is going to take you there. They'll understand it. They'll see that. And then it's going to be okay. Like, it's not that hard. But for the other case, when you know this is just like a typical whatever robot, there's other tactics. You need to be strong in what you want. And you're not moving away from that. There's no fucking compromise. Okay? You don't. You're a steel fist in a felt glove. You are soft to the touch, but you're fucking strong, right? I'm not going to go into exactly deep examples, but I provide a little bit of video for you to understand from right here.
I know it sounds a little bit odd. You might find it hard to believe, but it's really true. It's really true. I've done it many, many times. But you have to be a hard ass from the beginning. It's like the concept that you want is an iron fist in a velvet glove. That's what you want. Iron fist in a velvet glove. You don't want to be like a weak, like an iron glove in a velvet fist, right? You want to be an iron fist in a velvet glove. So you don't bend, you're very tough, but you're very soft on the outside. So you're not going to, you know what I mean? You're a gentleman on the outside. It's like, this is the way it's going to be, but your rules are your rules, and they ain't going to change. Your rules are not going to change. And your rules are consistent, and they're kind of logical. She can kind of understand your rules. They're not like some weird, it's like, basically she can't come over without calling. That's just the way it is. And strangely enough, usually like the girls that walk in on me in these kind of situations, and I do the same thing if I'm not with a girl, I don't let them come in. So for example, another time, a girl, she came in without even telling me she was in town, and she had flown like several hours to see me, and she came to my door, and I was like, I looked at my window and I said, what are you doing here? And she said, and this girl was beautiful. I mean, she was like super, super hot. So it was really hard for me to do this. It was not easy. She was very hot. She was very, very sexy. And she came to my door, and she was all dressed all cutie pie too, the way I like. Yeah. And so and she came to the door, and she's knocking on the door. And then she said, I opened the door. I opened the window because I didn't want to open the door. I opened the window. I'm like, well, did we make an appointment? And she's like, oh no, but I had to this, and I came out, and I said, no appointment, like, you're not gonna come in, and she's like, I don't have any place to stay, I just can't. I said, like, well, that's, like, I'm sorry about that, like, I don't want to, like, I would have never planned this to be this way, but the rule is you can't just come by without calling, because that's stalking, and I'm not a stalker, and I don't want to date anybody who's a stalker. So as bad as I feel, there's no way you're coming in, right? And then she like handed me this really nice present that she had brought in the window, right? And then like the next time I saw her, it was totally fine, right? She called, she's like, hey, can I come over? What are you doing? And I'm like, come on over. And she was like totally smiles. She was all smiles because I had stood my ground. I wasn't a pussy, and also I was very consistent. So it wasn't like I was like, like I don't. And again, here's the other thing. I personally, this is not just a dumb rule I made up, I don't like when people show up. To me, it's like terrorism. Like, if somebody shows up without calling me to my door, and they can call me, it's very easy for them to pick up the phone. That's not cool. I'm not into that. Like, that's the problem. That's why I'm so hard about it, is because I don't think it's cool. I don't think it's nice. So she can smile all she wants and bring a present, but it's still not nice. And if she knows that, she knows that. But girls are so used to getting their way with guys, is that guys are such pussies that they, especially a hot girl, right? They're just gonna let her in, right? So you have to have rules. You gotta hold your ground.